The question is, what's the difference between a traumatized brain and a non-traumatized brain? How does trauma affect the way we think, feel, and respond?
Okay, thank you. I think the main thing we need to realize is what trauma does to the brain, because I'm going to kind of emphasize that and explain that. And if you don't have any of those symptoms, well, then your brain isn't traumatized. Okay, but obviously I'll explain that a bit more. So when we experience trauma of any kind, and I stress of any kind, it actually sends a whole lot of what are called adrenaline and cortisol hormones secrete to our brain. It shoots up and surges into our brain because then we realize there's danger. And those hormones are meant to actually protect us from that danger. It's actually alerting the brain saying, there's a problem here, protect this person, there's huge danger. Now, there are three areas of the brain that we need to look at, how trauma affects it. So I'm going to share quickly. I'm just going to go to, where's my, oh, no, I can't find it now. Because obviously now there we go. I'm trying to find the right thing here. There we go. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Right, okay. So I know it's not a very good picture, especially now that I've actually done it this way, but I think it gives you an idea of the three main areas we need to look at, which is the amygdala, which you can see is kind of a little on the right hand nearer the bottom, little black spot there. The prefrontal cortex, which is to the right there, and then the hippocampus, which is also at the bottom there. Tiny little strip of area of the brain called the hippocampus. And these three areas of the brain are really significantly affected when we experience trauma, with the surge of the adrenaline and the cortisol all coming up to flood the brain because it wants to protect us. So first of all, let's look at the amygdala. The amygdala is basically our emotion center. It's where our emotions are centered and we can actually process emotions, we can work through emotions. And the thing is, when trauma happens, that becomes incredibly overactive. That's why we get emotional overwhelm, because there is just so much happening in that emotional center because of the trauma and the danger and the fright and the terror and whatever it is, that the amygdala gets totally overactive, and that's why we get emotionally overwhelmed. That means we can actually interpret everyday events as threats. So I'll go out into the road and somebody will blow a hooter because they're angry at another driver. But because there's some trauma associated with hearing a hooter, I automatically think there's an association, and I can automatically then go back into that trauma situation because that triggers me, because there's an association in my brain with the emotion of what comes with the hooter. Okay, so that becomes very hyperactive, causing us to become over emotional or emotionally dysregulated. Then we have the hippocampus, which is down here, as you can see. That is responsible for memory formation, how we remember things clearly, the past, the present, what happened at this stage of our lives, what happened then. And that gets totally confused because, again, of the surge of the adrenaline and everything. So when the hippocampus gets affected, it's going to affect our memories. And that's why people who have had trauma can't automatically distinguish between what is past and present. The hooter incident, for example. I had a hooter problem 2 years ago with trauma in a car accident, but I never worked through the trauma. And now here, 2 years later, I'm hearing another hooter, for example, and my memory just can't distinguish. I'm not in the past anymore. It automatically takes me back there. So then we have the prefrontal cortex, the third part, which is obviously to do with planning and making decisions and thinking logically and thinking coherently. That gets really affected. So I can't plan, I can't think, I can't focus properly, I can't concentrate. Everything's hazy, furry, I'm kind of in a fog, all of those things. So that's a traumatized brain. And if that continues for more than 6 weeks after the trauma, then we actually go into what is called PTSD. So be aware that when we've gone through trauma, how long am I having symptoms of sleeplessness, irritability, emotional overwhelm, I can't think, I can't focus, all of those things. But if those areas in your brain are obviously fine, then you're okay. You're not traumatized. But we do need to work through trauma and process it with somebody who can help us professionally or who has the knowledge to help us, because we need to get that brain back to its normal, regular way of handling things, whether it's planning, whether it's functioning, whether it's memory, whether it's our emotion. Obviously, the emotion is also very, very important. So that, I think, kind of gives you the idea. Okay, just another quick diagram there that shows where, again, the cortex shrinks, because that's actually what we are planning. Our planning center, that shrinks, that gets smaller. And the hippocampus is, again, the past and the present. And that also shrinks because it's being impacted. And then the amygdala actually gets hyperactive because it's over emotional. So I'm going to stop sharing. I think that kind of explains it. Thank you.